Okay, looks like we're live. I I feel weird. I feel like I should contemplate. Well, you have to understand that um, we're almost a day away from the anniversary of the Aurora shooting, a shooting which was so messed up that when I say messed up, I mean as an operation, it was messed up in general, as most things are. But the Aurora shooting was so messed up that even if I didn't make any videos that I would have considered some of the more premier videos on some of the inconsistencies that essentially the uh, the thing would have failed anyway, just on the basis of literally people saying there must have been two shooters. There must have been two shooters because one of the canisters didn't come from his side, that it came from the middle light as opposed to the exit door. Somebody else got main line saying he took a cell phone, went to the door, opened up the door. Anyway, regardless, the events that happened that night were, I would wager to say, the events that has caused a lot of what you see happening now. And I, if I'm right, played a very large role in that. you know, I leave open if I'm wrong, but I mean, we're kind of watching quite a bit of things happening in the mainstream media, which would suggest otherwise. So, that anniversary is a day away, and it is my opinion that what, I don't know, because the powers that be tend to have, part of the problem is that they tend to have superstitious motivations, and so, you know, I was expecting something rather large to happen by the time, before that shooting. And, 1 second, please. Okay. Yes, I was expecting something rather large to happen before the shooting. Nevertheless, the day of, there will be a get-together, a remembrance thing. And Piers Morgan, did a little piece on the shooting, either pre-recorded or it was tonight or it was last night. And even Piers Morgan was, I would say, not willing to do too much talking on the subject of the shooting. The shooting is a very hush-hush subject, a very sweep it under the rug subject, and something like an anniversary doesn't go away, and may in fact pierce into the mainstream. And just the mentioning of the shooting itself, especially now with regard to the other guest on Piers Morgan's show. And it's not like Piers Morgan is basically parroting, an agenda, and he's cleverly now playing the, almost ironically, he's playing the controlled opposition at this point, which is the side that's thinking Obama is not part of a conspiracy against guns. So does he, Piers knows everything, basically. So, the reason I know that he knows everything is that he played, it was clear that he and Jones were pulling a operation off together when they did that, and even that backfired, to be honest with you. Even though they executed it perfectly, the both of them, it backfired. Simply because the American people, subconsciously or otherwise, know something is up with the world, and it's becoming painfully obvious. And I would say we're at that point where they are cornered, and when we reach out our hand, either we do so to attack or we do so to comfort. And it is at that point where we need to start thinking about that decision, because they know it too, it's happening, where we would have to be willing to reach out our hand and quite possibly comfort, because they still, I would think, have teeth and could still bite. And of course, they are possibly unwilling to concede to the more rational positions. They are unwilling to concede to their own place within the universe and within the species of humanity. And there is a risk that if they are not, first, if you are able to open that avenue, then at least they have that avenue psychologically, so to speak, to enter into, which is the idea of conceding. You know, and by conceding, maybe even we would be tempted to simply forgive them. It's so crazy that the tenets of Christianity is now being called upon, you know, well, of almost all religions, you know, of all the core religions, there is a time for forgiveness, and the act of forgiveness in this regard is one of the most amazing. But to them, they should see themselves as I had said earlier on my Facebook, being on the front lines of a process, of a fight for humanity. They should see themselves as being capable now of being heroes. For certainly there can be no greater positive stimulus than to know that you've done something really right, and to know that you've done something good. And it doesn't take much to convince you of what is right and what's wrong. For in a complex series of getting away with it, they have manifested their own rationality, which fails under logical analysis. By that I mean their own belief system, which perpetuates the incorrect behavior. And you know, I'm going to go to my wall now. There's a lot of good points on the Facebook wall that I think would be good to make. I feel kind of morbid tonight. I just have this feeling that there is an invisible war of some sort, and it's taking place within the minds of these people within the power structure, these people that really pull weight. And now comes a time for the battle that is occurring inside of their minds, and that is kind of where it's at, because it's now a decision-making process. What's feasible and what isn't, but also what's right and what isn't. So let me just go down a little bit, and I'll just talk about some things that are going on. Because let me go ahead and tell you, they're starting to whip out the good PR for the black community. In fact, some of these people that are speaking out against Zimmerman, I just have a hard time believing that they would even do that. Like Snoop Dogg, Snoop Lion. I'm like, I can't believe. You know, I can actually understand Will Smith, or maybe even Jamie Foxx, even though Jamie Foxx kind of comes off a little bit like an insider, but I could understand Will Smith. But when it comes to Snoop Dogg, though, Snoop Dogg's extremely level-headed, and if he's legitimately doing that, he's legitimately doing that. But it's just anyway, they're whipping out the good PR now. They're getting some reverend to not just say that there is the verdict and the evidence suggests that there's nothing racially involved here, and that the racial stirring is coming from Obama, and that the gun control, it's about gun control basically. Obama's pushing gun control, so it's going into conspiracy theory and it's being spoken of rationally on the news. And how do I say this? It's just that it's clear that the agenda is to reveal he even reveals it when he says it, is to reveal a psychological block that has been placed there over time in the minds of the white American public, which is that you simply cannot criticize somebody not of your race, because if you do that, then you flex your most stereotypical evil behavior, which is your irrational fear or hatred of other people of other races. And it's like, because of that, in reality, white people, I would say, tend to be the least racist when it boils down to it. Am I saying a supremacist argument? No, but I'm just saying that when you're raised to literally convince yourself that you're doing something which is just the height of incorrect behavior, then it tends to make you not that way. So, in general, I would say that let's just forget about that. I guess I even feel it as I'm talking about it. It's like, how dare you suggest that, you know. So yeah, when I work on the game on the Unreal Engine, it's spiking and it's glitching. You know, I didn't do anything in particular. It's quite possible that some random Windows update has sabotaged my ability to fluidly work on that game, but it's no big deal. I'll figure that one out. Possibly I'm wrong. You know, I have to throw those things out there, but you know, I don't understand why that's happening. Let's see. I heard that there may be in the works, no, there's some rumor that there's a false flag on the horizon, which is an EMP false flag. So what they will do, I suppose, is detonate some nuclear device or multiple nuclear devices. I'm guessing it would work by over the ionosphere and basically utilize the ionosphere to produce something similar to like a solar flare directly onto the inhabitants of the continent, and the power systems will black out, or if they don't, then they'll just throw the switch and say the power system's blacked out. So, you know, that will suck. That will essentially be a very effective way of pulling the plug, so to speak, on everything that they may be allowing to hit the fan, essentially. So if that happens, the first thing that you do is take to the square. Take to the square, and then go to your preachers, your religious leaders. Go to the people and the community leaders. And everyone needs to organize. And what's really nice is that it will actually bring us into a state of, I don't want to, of course, let's not do that. People are going to die. But I could see people, as a result of this Zimmerman-Trayvon case and this trying to be togetherness, that when this happens, people will be more mindful of how they are acting within their own little social groups. Instead, there will be a togetherness feeling, and it'll be kumbaya. If they're expecting, you know, mass chaos, probably not. Could they turn that into mass chaos? Sure. Just like they turned the Trayvon incident probably into mass chaos. So the committee got together, the GOP to criticize, or not criticize, but investigate and tie the White House to the IRS scandal. You have to look at the timing of these things. So they're trying to make it look like Obama's desperate, that at any second Obama's going to do something, and it's like so obvious now. So what we're things are very, very unstable, and the only way that we're going to regain stability is that if we ourselves are stable. And what's really nice is that we're only extremely unstable whenever we're listening to people. We're very stable whenever we're listening to ourselves. And if anything, recent events are suggesting that we should listen to ourselves. And when those things come around, there will be some ill will and competition, but if you're listening, then if you're listening right now, then it would be a very good idea to try not to be in the event that something like that happens or some sort of crisis happens, try not to be too combative, but instead try to look like a community leader that people would rally behind, similar to a community leader, a preacher, or something like that. China apparently is going to be backing a yuan or whatever with gold, and supposedly that will be the false flag reason, if you ask me, of why the Federal Reserve note will tank. And a better way for the Federal Reserve note to tank is if we printed our own money. But anyway, this is another possible false flag where suddenly China starts trading gold, and everybody wants to use that note exchangeable in gold. And effectively, what would happen then is that they'll say that the dollar is tanking, and they'll blame all sorts of things on that. There's all kinds of stuff here. We can't assume that they're going to be humanitarian, and that's why we're going to get to something else a little bit later here. It says apparently this is really cool. Greenwave TV, AMTV, Topher Morrison basically did a little piece on how Tesla Motors unveils the Hyperloop transit system, which it hopes to do. And this would be an example of, this is just a small part of how amazing life will be if they ever just stop doing what they're doing. And if they stop doing what they're doing and they get rid of a incredibly immoral slave system, then you'll be able to travel from like here to Japan in an hour, and you won't even be in the air. You'll just be in these mag rails. Let's see. Jimmy Carter apparently now says that there's no democracy anymore, and I think that before 9/11 there was, and even egging off towards 9/11, there was some sense in which there were repercussions for what they were doing, and the power has grown so strong, and the dumbing down has become so potent that the tyranny is growing very large. And I'm not trying to blame anything, but when it comes down to it, it's just the Americans are so divided as a people. In some sense, you could say, well, it's good because we're independent, and it's good because we can express ourselves in our own way, and we're not held by a standard, and that's true. But the division has been inflamed to such an extent that what's cool in the society is this Justin Bieber type of thing, which is somebody who laughs at you and calls you a nerd for talking about real issues, and it's demanned everybody. It's gotten rid of their manhood, their responsibility. It's gotten rid of that. Before they would portray the rational person as somebody who was a man, like the professor that was on the island, or a Cary Grant character, or if you've ever watched any of the old Japanese, if you've ever watched any of the old Japanese Godzilla movies, the main character, the cool guy, was always this scientist, and it was odd how that switched around, and that they did that on purpose. Now, to be a rational sort of person was to be shunned, basically. Maybe even warranted. We haven't really lived in a society where, when I say warranted, it's because obviously these rational people gave rise to very terrible classification systems and weapons of war in their own neurosis. But you can't really judge them because you don't know just what was happening over their heads or in the background. Certainly, even Oppenheimer, who created that bomb, was well aware of what sort of tragedy he brought before the world, and so we don't know what it would be like for rational people in the modern age to be without the conspiracy looming over their heads. So let's see. I said, I wonder if this all turns out to be a gigantic sting operation on shittiness in people. That'd be great, right? So the whole point of why we're going through this is to rid ourselves of shittiness in people. And I said I'd like to make a list of all the psyops that are going on. And if, people just don't even remember this, but there was a shooting at the Family Research Council, which was essentially investigating the shootings that had recently happened in both Aurora and the Wisconsin Sikh temple, and apparently they were tying it to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is rumored to be a front for Israel's Mossad. And if that's the case, then they tried to assassinate the people in there, and things went wrong. And they ran this story about how Chick-fil-A was against gays, and this guy loaded up his backpack full of chicken sandwiches and somehow got let in. That was an insider. Got let in, and he walks in and he shoots the off-duty security guard who just happened to be there, and the off-duty security guard tackled him. Failed psyop, failed assassination attempt. So I can only hope that those incidents like that, and then it was swept under the rug, covered up. Obviously, there's some sort of incentive to do so. Man, I'm hoping that humanity everywhere is doing what it takes now, because this is real. This isn't a movie, and that we're doing what it takes now to live this life and to do what it and to stop what's happening, because I feel it tonight. I do. I feel. I'm gonna get to your comments soon, but I can only hope that the amount of time that this has taken has changed minds, and I'm worried that it's so centralized that we have to actually be concerned about whose minds are changing. And I can only hope that enough reasons have been given, enough democratic upheaval has been given within the power structure to change the mind of somebody who may have the world under their thumb. And because the signal hasn't been given, at least not to the layperson like me, of what their intentions are and what they plan to do. And I can't say that I'm not without doubt that one of the reasons that I'm alive even now is, or even that you're alive, is that their ways are mysterious. This person's ways are mysterious, and indeed the reason that we're alive is an intended result of this vice grip that has been placed on the species. So we'll deal with that later. But somebody calling for the boycott of Florida, and I said we're the third most populated state. You know what I mean? That's like really offensive. I mean, would you say that of California or New York? They'd laugh at you. And then you say boycott Florida, and it's like people just pick on Florida because it's whatever. I don't even know how we operate the way we do. Probably has a lot to do with like sensitive stuff being over here, being so close to Cuba and whatever. Let's see. You know, I wonder if Bloomberg is kind of being used to educate the inner city liberals on the conundrum with liberalism and then over legislation. He's doing something with like wanting to mandate the option of using stairs or something like that, but like somebody else suggested on the Fox, they were like, it's a trick. Like all of a sudden it'll be like that, and then all of a sudden you're going to get incentivized to use the stairs and not incentivized to use the automatic stuff. So you know, see. Okay. When Jimmy Carter said that we're no longer a democracy, I don't know what happened there, but you know, because Jimmy Carter has to know things or has to know what's going on, and when he said that, maybe it's indicative of what is going on. So let's see what else we got. I said there really is no reason other than slavery as to why we do not already have the technologies merely put together in the mind of science fiction writers in the 1800s. Yeah, because that whole like pneumatic system was a concept that was put together in the mid to late 1800s, right? I mean, they could just think like, I know what metal is, I know what pneumatic, you know, because they're thinking about like suction, but you know, regardless, that would have been like not, you know, it would have been frictionless, which would have been the same thing as magnets, and you know, I can imagine us building it, and then you think like, well, why hasn't anyone done it? Well, no one's been incentivized. Why aren't people incentivized? Because we don't live in a free market society. So, you know, instead of like, you know, because a science fiction writer will be like, here's science fiction, and then somebody's like, oh, let's do that. It's obvious we should do something that benefits humanity. You know what I'm saying? It's like we don't live in a free market. That would have had conflicting interests. Ow. Let's see. And then again, it's like the 1800s. So, but you know, into the 1900s, I should. Let's see. Snapping back to reality will be nothing short of heaven. And I said it won't be work. It'll be fun. So people are like, oh, you free up the market, then we all have to work. And it's like, no, you free up the market. Robots will harvest all of the food, plant all of the food. You won't be incentivized or forced to work in a job that literally a vending machine could do by itself, right? So people that work at, say, McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever could be fully automated. The only reason that jobs are even there is to keep you from thinking. No joke, okay? So there's your food. You're going to be able to survive. Does that make sense? You can survive. You know, if you want to contribute, well, you know, then you can contribute. Everything, there's no, like, you have more of this one resource called Federal Reserve notes than I do, Instead, it's just what you've done. You essentially are building, say, reputation, or you're building, because you're trading whatever you want. You're trading whatever you want. We don't even know what that's like. We don't even know what that's like. Anyway, it'll be heaven, because then those things I'm talking about will be done, essentially. So the committee, the way they were talking to each other, I'm sure that there's a sort of competitive spirit, Dems versus Republicans, and the way they talk to each other is kind of like childish, but I can't negatively stimulate them. I like that they are at least looking like they're doing something about bringing to light corruption in the government and waking people up. So that's good. Just hurts the PR, I said, but nonetheless is it's nice to see it happen. So really very soon this would be impeaching Obama. But if it's staged, then what are we seeing? We're seeing some sort of controlled conspiracy theory that is causing a controlled uprising that could be potentially very dangerous to the American people, and I don't know what will happen. Hopefully it'll be something like a foil plot. It'll be like, we found this nuke, it was about to go off, and it was brought in, through Mexico, and it turns out that it was coming from this drug cartel, that of which was linked to, and hopefully they don't, make it out to be one of their chosen enemies, but linked to North Korea. It was stolen. Oh man, that's what's going to happen. The freighter, which was trading stuff with Cuba and then picked up in Panama, is probably going to be the result of smuggling some sort of a nuclear device into the drug cartel's hands. And then the nuke will be smuggled in through Mexico, because that's going to bring even more controversy with Obama. I've already theorized about this, so much earlier than now. I can't remember when I did that. November, December, or something like that. And hopefully it'll be like, we foiled it. We foiled it, gets tracked to, and I'm not trying to combat the role of the PSYOP, and I just fucking did, I'm sorry, it just doesn't even matter. It's like nobody takes it seriously anymore anyway. Alright, well, fuck it. Alright, let's see if that just knocked me off the air. Nope, I'm still here. Okay, alright. Let's see. Yeah, possibly the EMP false flag. Let's see. Maybe holding our head. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to get those comments soon. I just have a lot of things I need to talk about first. And I said the poor fangirls of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, if they're even real. I already know that there is a tendency for COINTELPRO or InfraGard or whatever to pose as these sort of people online for, they say, surveillance purposes. But even this is just controlled conspiracy theory. And once again, the reason he showed up on the cover, the reason that they even used him, or they're portraying him as an attractive person, or they picked an attractive person, is to foment conspiracy theorists. And they already know, essentially, that it worked, James Holmes' case, so let's repeat it, see if we can do that again. Let's see, have you heard? Somebody made a pretty good statement. It's like George Zimmerman as a kid, and he said, before he was white. And then you sit there and think, like, because he doesn't, you wouldn't peg him as a specifically, Northern European white kid. And suddenly, there's a lot of angles here. It's like you contrast him with a black guy, suddenly he's white, or, you make him stand for any conservative values, and suddenly he represents, all white people, or, he's suddenly a black person dies, and whoever did it must be a white person. I mean, there's a million angles you could go with that, so it's pretty, a lot of paradigm shifting going on there. Is any of that real? No, it's all social constructs that they're using to manipulate and control you. Let's see. Imagine. I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and quote it. Imagine, if you will, a society based on a set of laws that could end your life or put you away for a majority of it if you break them, right? Just laws in society. And imagine that this society functions by citizens doing whatever it takes to earn the signatures of a small group of people, which has happened when the Federal Reserve got in here. So all of them are just, that's the way the system is working, is trying to earn these signatures from this small group of men that are hidden. So then I said, imagine that to protect that system, right? To protect the system of the laws and of the people that are, printing the signatures that you're trying to get. This small group of people have to break the laws themselves that would normally kill or incarcerate anyone else. So, what would you say of that society, or the people of that society? Does that society work? Are these people truly free? And the answer is no. So the laws are good. The laws are not being followed. Period. Laws. Laws are like, people are like, laws are bad, but the simple fact of the matter is that the whole point of the Constitution is to really decrease that concept of laws and restrictions. And Ron Paul says it best. He's like, I don't understand why we have to get a whole team of lawyers, like business lawyers, to handle legislation. Let's just open up the Constitution, their Bill of Rights, and read it. So it's certainly there is need for some level of dissecting and complexity, but not to the extent that you're doing so in order to essentially break the law or undermine that law. And so it's just become painfully clear to people that you can't run everything like a business. I was just talking to a teacher, and this teacher is dealing with essentially, like, Rick Scott's wife happens to own the company that runs the machines that for the standardized testing for students, and they literally look at legislation. They literally look at governance as a business for them. This is crony capitalism. This is, I'm going to now mix telling people what to do with making money, and then I'll call it business. And it's just, it boils down to the Federal Reserve note, which is like everything. They have effectively taken the, no wonder it's valued so much. They've taken it and they said, here is total control over the, achieving godlike status amongst other people in society. And it's we were born into this, and certainly this is the most noble fight. I mean, it's metaphysical now, and what you're seeing are metaphysical powers. And let me take a look at that. What's up, William? All right. Now let's see. Then this was actually pretty interesting to see this. Basically, what looks like a possible controlled opposition band. Maybe they were disinformed, or maybe they're wrong. You never can know. Or maybe the reason that there's such good production quality is that they are that they're controlled opposition. But basically, they're called Conspirituality. And back in 2009, they had a video, and I just said, I'll just read it. Oh man, never thought it would be so plainly laid out in Zionist format like this, because their symbol is like, in fact, it's like 3 stars of David, but it has like a Chinese symbol in the middle. I don't even know what it means, but it says the good guys and the resistance. This is what I thought was originally going on, like ever since maybe ever since halfway through Bush's. Well, if Obama's been planned to be put in office since the 80s, which we'll talk about that later. I mean, because some guy basically says, I remember when I was stationed in Hawaii, there was a boy, a black boy. No, like he was in the 80s, so I guess it would have been like college or whatever for him. But he meets him at the bar, and the kid tells him, he said, I'm from Mombasa, or I was born in Mombasa, or I was born in Kenya. And you know, the reason he remembers that was that he had just come back from Mombasa, and he was talking about it with the kid, and it's, you know, it's Barack Obama. And he also said that he lived in India, or was an Indonesian citizen for a time or something like that. And he also said to him he wanted to be president. So Obama has been groomed for this position since he was a child, and then you have to ask yourself, for what reason? If he was groomed that for presidency, this is how they think, really far ahead, real far ahead like this. And it's probably because there was to be this war between the Jews and the Muslims. And I claim neither side, but obviously, it does appear that the manipulation is, there's an aggression upon us, that they are trying to suggest that Obama is part of some sort of Islamic conspiracy, along with the immigration of Muslims, etc., and that the Jews or Israel is going to have to intervene on our behalf in order to keep this horrible thing from happening. And things appear to have turned around. Appear to. Anyway, this is one of the reasons to believe that. Anyway, in this music video, the good guys, the resistance, tote the Star of David, but the enemies are white, satanic Nazis who happen to have member hats which show Islamic symbols, and like they're white guys, old white guys with like the Islamic sword and the Islamic moon and star and stuff like that, and it has like Arabia written on it. And of course they also peg the blame on, they talk about British royalty running everything, which is just ridiculous. I mean, for the Queen, you know, I don't even know what's up with the Queen, okay, but for her to concoct these schemes is just, I think it's beyond her to be able to do so. So I said, yeah, so this is a stupid video apparently made in 2009, just so happens to show the prime directive, which may still be in play, which is make it look like there's an Islamic conspiracy against the Zionists, and Obama is an agent of it. In fact, when you watch the Matrix movies, there's an oppression of the machine against the people who live in Zion. You know what I mean? So the Zionists, on the other hand, they're the saviors. Yeah, right. Okay. But something happened at some point. So that was made in 2009. Well, in December of 2012, they make another video, and they at some point, it's called Terrorist Chick, and at some point in the video they talk about the false flag. Because in the first one it's all about inside job, inside job. Well, that's a disinformation campaign. And this one, it tears the American flag, and behind, you know, when it talks about the truth about 9/11 or false flag, tears the American flag, and you can see the Israeli flag behind it. And that's if they're controlled. This is what you have to understand. If that was controlled opposition, and for them to then put out that video, that shows the complexity. It shows what they're doing now, or who's in control now. And it, you know, maybe what it is never mind. Like sometimes it's like a chess game. You don't want to predict something and then cause something that you want to happen not to happen. You know, basically. Let's see. This is the most bombshell video I've seen recently is on RT, which is the FBI refuses to release autopsy of the guy that they killed over here in Orlando, related to the Sarnia brothers. And they talk about all the inconsistencies with that, with his death, and that's a really bombshell video. It's on my wall if you guys want to share that. Let's see. 3D printed pen, that looks really cool. What I'm thinking about would be really cool with that is if it's obviously very complex to do this, but to make it like a glove thing, and the emission point will be at the tip of your finger. Maybe you could put like a little razor on your, or something that will activate it, or like a razor, and then you could build something like you would naturally, like this, and then, you know, cut it off or something like that, shape it, and then do it again. Because right now it's a pen and it looks really hard to do, and it's real thick and big, but that's what they had to do at first, you know. I imagine later it could possibly result in what I'm talking about, because they have to heat it and cool it. It'd be really thick or whatever. But so then I tried to reason with, you know, Netanyahu. I'm like, Netanyahu, you know, I mean, you were quite likely fooled. I mean, there is a video of Netanyahu in the 90s being spoken to in, you know, by a rabbi. And the rabbi is basically saying, like, do what you have to do to bring the Mashiach, the Messiah. And obviously this is in reference to what would eventually happen, which is like all, you know, 9/11 and stuff like that. But when you think about just reality, you know, what's really going on, I said, you've been fooled, you've been played, and then I said, your battle is not with us, it's not with the people of this world, but it is with something they put in your mind. Okay, there's obviously a person who is whose real fight against evil and whose real fight for doing what's right is now encroached upon them, that it is affecting their decision-making processes. And so this is an appeal to say, you know, you don't have to be wrong. You don't have to be bad. You know, you could turn against, you could be the Olympian. You could stand on behalf of humanity and turn against your forefathers or fathers that implanted in you this this hatred of humanity. And I said, you know, somebody's like, oh, you know, they're feeling threatened now, and they're going to lash out, and it's very dangerous whenever they do that. And I said, well, they should see themselves. When I say they, I'm talking about Israelis or Jews or Zionists. They should see themselves as what they are, which is very likely to be, you know, instead of like we're entitled to the entire world or whatever, or, you know, or whatever complex occultic philosophy that is, which is something like God just happens to be one of us, and we're God's, you know, sort of trapped in mortal bodies, and we express our godhood by, you know, trumping all over the rest of humanity. But anyway, they should call themselves what they are, humans, okay, of Eastern, you know, very likely to be Eastern European descent, and see themselves as I said before, being on the front lines of a fight for humanity. They don't have to see themselves as being opposed. There is clearly some sort of fundamental metaphysical issue going on that really exists within their minds. That's where the fight's at right now, okay? That is in their minds, and they need to see, because what it is, what they are, is that part of them that's connected to the rest of the universe, okay? So otherwise they wouldn't exist, okay? The reason that they're alive is that there is a potential link to the omega point, to the rest of the universe, basically, to the point of things, to the way of things. They are on the front line of that, and we should forgive them. I mean, they basically have been engineered since birth to think this way by whatever odd sort of metaphysical force has engineered them that way. But if they can overcome this, then I think it is totally reasonable to forgive them and just say, you know what, it's over now, it's over. Nobody's going to commit crimes because everybody will be full and happy. And we're going to expand now. We're going to expand, and we're going to do a lot of great things because we won. We won as humans against a belief virus, which was this being separate from everything. Of solipsism, essentially. Yeah, I would say that the evil is derived from sort of thinking that you're all that matters and you're all that exists, and you don't understand that there's obviously you and some sort of stimulus, and at least acknowledge that there's that external stimulus. Well, what's your relationship to that external stimulus? Certainly you cannot consider yourself, you know, the only thing that matters. There's clearly a process occurring of some sort. And how could it feel good, you know? How can it feel right to be alone? And it's actually a scary thought. Any moment of contemplation about solipsism is a very, very scary thought, and it's just not true. And that's why typically uncomfortable thoughts tend to be there's something missing or it's misunderstood. And the truth, when you sort of come upon it, is actually a very comfortable, very simple, you know, idea. In fact, there's actually a positive and negative stimulus that occurs in the mind when you come upon like what's real, and I tap into that personally to try to figure things out, because sometimes I'm just like, it just doesn't. It scares me. It basically like causes fear within me to believe something to actually be the case, and then I you know, work a little bit longer on it until it becomes something that grooves or makes sense. I start to figure out what it is. Okay, anyway, I'm diverging. And I said, but no, their divinity comes from whatever their flesh is stimulating or telling them to do, and any reasoning with them is, they could tell themselves, it's the whispering of Satan, it's the whispering of something, you know, it's ultimately evil or something like that. And I said, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. They're on the front lines of the fight. They are who they are. The person that's listening to this right now is the person that is at the very front of a force that is connected to the rest of the universe, and in a good way, connected to truth. Okay. Let's see. I actually thought Piers Morgan was pretty clever tonight. You know, he had his reverend, the Black Reverend, who was sort of speaking on the verdict Zimmerman's behalf, and you know, Piers Morgan comes in and obviously faking, you know, but nonetheless it requires some level of cleverness to act, you know. So whatever. Let's see. And this is a nice quote. I said, your friends were hidden amongst those you were raised to believe were your enemies. You know, so who does that make your enemy? Olympian. This goes to the reference to the Olympians, the humans, and the Titans. But nonetheless, nevertheless, it's kind of similar to that game, Deus Ex, who, you know, I mean, which was made by a Jew. Supposedly, can't remember his name right now, but regardless, it was a conspiracy theory-based game. And in the game, prior to 9/11, it basically plays out 9/11, and you come to find out that it was the government that blew up the Statue of Liberty rather than 9/11 tower, the Twin Towers, and they were blaming it on the conservative pro-American terrorists. and you join the side of the pro-American terrorists, the National Secessionist Forces. It was just so predictive as to what was happening. It was clearly somebody knew what was going on. Such an extent, there's like a glitch where in the skyline of New York, this is before 9/11, there's no World Trade Center towers. People said, "Did you know it was going to happen?" And they were like, "No, that was a glitch. We didn't have enough texture space, so we didn't include the towers." All right, let's see. And I said, I speculate that by freeing up the market and getting rid of the conspiracy and re-engineering all of this classified tech, like, could you imagine using HARP to, like, make the whole world lush? I mean, that'd be wonderful, you know. I mean, they're already using HARP to do all sorts of destabilizing things. So why not use it for good? This is what I mean by, like, you will not actually be raising your finger in the new world. In the new world, it'll be like, yeah, use the HARP to make the crops grow, and then use the automated tractor system and watering system, whatever, to harvest the crops and process the food. And like, it's just like it's all there. Utopia is right there, and it's just that we're in a mixture of a perpetual state of covering up crimes, and also a neurotic sense that because I'm covering up these crimes, it has to do with my own personal, their own personal divinity over other people. That no matter, even if it's better for everyone, including them, there's this belief that it won't be, and that's just incorrect. Incorrect. If they took the time to literally just be like, let's go to this disclosure route, and which is what I'm thinking is kind of going on. I don't know that, but it does appear that there's something different going on. Then, but at the same time, you know, move us in a direction where everybody's in a better position. Then, you know, finally we're done. You know, we can start getting on with what's rational. And so let's just go and continue. I said, make everything even, and we all get better in the halls of Valhalla, but try and push everyone down and no one grows. I said, I feel as I am somehow aware of my own mortality tonight. Yeah. So if I'm right, then I have to be worried about superstitious ambitions. Okay. Wow, I'm sorry, guys. I got to go through your comments. Okay. Let's see. I feel morbid as well, bro. Thank you, Kung Patty. EMP, likely internet attack. Yeah, locals will organize, but don't expect technocrats to believe conspiracy whistleblowers. Yeah. Continued whistle softly anyway. Yep. Dita says, I feel like there's way too much division in the alternative research community. Yeah, I think people are very confused as to what's going on, and I don't blame them. It's like nobody can really tell. Let's see, I feel like the mainstream media is advertising for the new Rolling Stone issue. That's a good point. Certainly, I would say that the entire reason that's out there is to foment conspiracy theory, because it's very clear that they are doing something similar to disclosure. What they're piggybacking onto it, I don't know. Or is it disclosure all to its own? That's a comfortable thought. I have been, throughout the past few days, entertaining the idea that we're dealing with that stereotypical Illuminati, which is this those who are enlightened, who are not necessarily doing bad things, and who are holding the world together, so to speak. So maybe that's what they've come to, or something like that. All right. U.S. and England ready to murder more thousands in Syria. Yeah, I think that the process, like whoever it is that has all of this power, is very much hidden from people. Okay. and it can't be known what it is that they're doing because apparently it's very compartmentalized. It does not appear that a lot of people actually understand. It's like they're asleep in their own happiness all around that core group. Kat says traditionalist is white. Old Trotsky trick. He convinced Russians to kill Russians. Reds versus whites. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Meanwhile, Detroit, Michigan filed bankruptcy. General 9. That is crazy, but you know that's part of, I think, a staged sort of event, which is like, oh, check out this totally pro-Obama city has Obama's failed that city, you know, so falls in line with the Patsy Obama thing. Let's see. Will says, it's a Barack Obama quote, my closest to the Jewish American community was probably what repelled me to the U.S. Senate. We have to be a little bit careful about attacking specifically Jewish people because that is the very justification that Israel has for doing what it's doing. You do not want to attack specifically Jewish people because that says, well, we can't fit in anywhere, so we need to have our own state. If we don't have our own state, then we're going to be persecuted wherever we're at. This is our way of being free. This is why we have the right to kill everybody in the world. So, you know, you have to split hairs. But, to be honest with you, and this is I guess you could say this is a big burden, but the Jews will inevitably, apparently, always sort of have that, say, tribal mentality. Which, just like if I were like, you know what, anywhere I go, whenever I find redheads, I'm going to gang up the redheads, and then we're going to conspire to subvert everyone around us. You can't do that, and it's part of their religious texts. It's part of this definition of Jew, which is, you know, being apart from everybody and being owed all these things. So it is very important, I think, for the Israelis and the Jewish community to realize the racistness of it, and quite possibly, I'm not saying stop practicing Judaism. That's another unfortunate thing, that the entire religion itself is ethno-religious. But it is to, and there are plenty of Jews now who are currently, you know, speaking out against the racistness of Zionism. But to make that, at least make that distinction between Jew, somebody basically born a certain way, according to them, and Zionist. And apparently it is the problem with it being a part of Judaism, and what appears to be happening now, is that it's the prophecy apparently is supposed to be that it's God that brings about Israel, and it is not man that will bring about Israel. And many great atrocities have been committed in the process of doing this, which has led some to believe that Zionism, or Israel, is actually not a noble motivation, but is rather some sort of a skewed occult by which true proponents of Judaism would find horrendous. Nevertheless, it's going to take an awakening of consciousness to at least realize that racism is bad, and thus, you know, do we call ourselves Aryans? Do I say I'm a white person, or do I say I'm an Aryan? Because I'm just like, well, it's just, you know, Aryan, which means I'm white and I'm a master race, and it's kind of like, no, that's irrational and leads to all forms of negative behaviors. Let's see. RT has been infiltrated with Zionists. You know, there was a time to educate the public as to the problem of Zionism, but it is quite thoroughly within the alternative community and in the mainstream all around the world and throughout the white or European peoples, and even in the black community to some extent, that there is a problem, and it's a Zionist problem. And certainly rational people would hope to take care of that problem. Let's see. By take care of, I mean like address it, literally. Like let's bring up Zionism here, you know. So let's see. All right, William. All right. Cat Ruby says expand Ichio Kaku. If you're against NWO, you're a terrorist. Ted Kaczynski versus cybernetics, mad scientists, and their financier bankers. If you're against the New World Order, you're a terrorist. Yeah. Oh, my friends. Bernanke admitted the system is going down. Expect a virus to destroy banking to be blamed on someone else and be behind it. Yeah, like if they're planning on like this disclosure sort of thing going on, then it is a curious matter why they're not being a little bit more predictive. Because right now the conspiracy theorists are like, oh my God, something bad's about to happen, you know. So I can't really tell why they wouldn't want to placate the conspiracy theorists a little bit more than they're doing, because we're all like, okay, something bad's about to happen, real bad. So if nothing bad is going to happen and they're just following along with their processes, because you know there's been a million things where you'd be like, oh my God, Snowden just revealed the NSA thing, something bad's going to happen, nothing bad happened, and I was like, oh my God. You know, this event happened in the middle, you know, Egypt's being overthrown, something bad's going to happen, nothing bad happens, you know what I mean? So, you know, oh my God, the Woolwich thing happened, and, you know, it implies this, something bad's going to happen, nothing happens. So, I don't know but because they're all relevant, and some of them are psyops. So because we just, as conspiracy theorists, just do not trust, and certainly do not trust any acts of manipulations or psyops. I do feel a little bit confident. I thought I was going to die in the next couple days, but now I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident. But you never know. You never know. I guess you just have to look at recent events. Let's take a look at your comments again. By the way, if you're writing comments, this is theoretical. If you're writing comments to me and I don't say anything about them, I'm not seeing them. You know, I mean, you know, specific people, which would fall in line with the theory that I do not have the audience I think I have. That's a positive comment. Let's see. William Martin says Israel was always a spiritual people and never a physical location. The spiritual nation of Israel was comprised of many from the original 12 tribes. I'm impartial. I don't really, you know, even if, let's say, like in the future, at some point everything gets undone and they're talking to conspiracy theorists or something like that, and they talk to me and they're like, as a conspiracy theorist, would you, because I was just watching the whole, you know, thing with the prince and the baby coming, we would like to knight you, and then I know you're thinking like, why would you be? But I mean, why not daydream a little bit? But then it brought up an interesting moral dilemma, because then you're like, well, if I get knighted, what I'm doing is I'm just falling into that same paradigm of surrendering my dignity, believing in superstitious things like, you know, being knighted and, you know, owing allegiance and all of that stuff. And I hope that one day when it comes down to it, people will realize that there is scientific appeal to notions like spirituality and metaphysical entities. But when it boils down to it, these rituals and things like that are a little bit damaging. A little bit damaging because you feel as though, you know, you give weight to something that is potentially dangerous, you know, because it's neurotic. You could come up with something like the only person that's ever meant to exist is me, or my family, or my friends, and you know, screw everybody else. That's the whole point. Well, that's, you know, that's like a neurotic sort of thing for you to come up with, and that's not good. You know? Let's deal with reality. What's the point? What good is that for you to do that sort of thing? How does that impact the rest of humanity? What if everyone did that? You know, Kantianism. Okay, so let's hope I survive the next couple of days here, huh? Let's hope we all survive. With recent events, there could be something very disturbing on the horizon. But hopefully, what it looks like is that there is a smooth psychological transition into a state of disclosure. Okay? Do certain bad guys appear to still have tons of power? Certainly. And there's just a complex sort of thing going on here. And those same bad guys need to just go ahead and wake up right now and not attack, because that's bad. You've already got very powerful people standing against you. But, like, see it ahead of time and go, wait, I want to be a part of this good thing. I want to contact somebody. I want a smooth transition with everybody else. We're going to be a part of this good thing. And to be honest with you, I like this Thomas Brinkley guy here that's talking about forgiveness. Okay? That needs to happen. Okay? Because that'll be a nice, smooth transition into this new world where we don't have to deal with this superstitious bullshit. Alright, you know, I feel like the chat is done. Just by, oh, it is done. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and read everyone's stuff real quick. Let's see, I'm sure most of the common Jewish people don't even know what Zionism is, and if informed, probably be against it. That's right. Thank you, Dita, 000. That is with a space and a period. That is most certainly right. You know, you got a space before your punctuation mark. It's usually a sign that you're an insider. And that's, you know, insiders are actually good guys at this point. Let's see. Steve Simmons says Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman thing is definitely a smokescreen for all the shit that's come out since the Boston bombings. It's a good way. I think it's made to look like a smokescreen, to be honest with you. It's a good way. It's also made to look like a racial war thing. It's a good way to buy time while getting people's minds off all that so they don't question. And William, it is in our best interest to not scare the Israelis or the Jews with irrational, you know, irrational, say, you know, acts of whatever, vengeance or whatever. They're clearly rational thinking beings, and I think Dita's right. I think that people lack information, and simply by giving them information, you bring them into a more rational state of mind. All right, very good night to everybody, and I'll see you possibly tomorrow, maybe not. All right, take it easy.